Hi, welcome back to Trek Chat, a podcast brought to you by Trek on the Tube. I am your very usual host, Sean, and I'm joined today by two fellow content creators, fellow Twitter peeps of the Star Trek universe, returning guests, Starfleet Boy. How you doing?
Hello, very good. Glad to be back.
As always, it's great to have you here. And new guest, Corey, aka the Final Frontier. How you doing?
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Today we have a topic. We're going to be talking about LGBT representation in Star Trek, or maybe gay or queer role models in Star Trek. And
There's not enough of them, and there needs to be more. That's my.
I agree.
I think everyone agrees on that. I think everyone can agree. So, do you guys have any opening statements?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to go respond to that, but I guess that's the response.
No, I absolutely agree. I'll tell you what. Here's the thing. You guys are part of the LGBT community, and I'm not. So this is kind of where I stand on something, and this has been my grief since I've been very young. Okay, my belief is that there are not enough. How should I put this? When a Starfleet crew goes to a planet, it's kind of always a heterosexual hit-on that happens. Like if Harry Kim beams down to a planet, he'll be hit on by a woman, and that's kind of how it's normalized in Star Trek. And I've always found that a bit strange because I've always found that like, why does it always happen that our characters are always hit on by, in very heterosexual ways, right? I would assume that you'd go to a planet, if you're Harry Kim, you're an attractive young Starfleet officer, all types of people would come and see you.
Well, I mean, yes, but also in your life, in your regular life, how often, I'm curious, are you hit on by someone of the same gender or sex, or someone who you don't expect to be hit on, like basically a man?
Me personally, a lot more than women, actually. In my youth, in Marseille, that like the few years that I spent in Marseille, I would go to the skate park because that would be near. We had like a skate park which was near the beach and what have you. I would constantly be hit on by men.
Well, I guess I shouldn't have made it specific to you, but in general, heteronormative kind of interactions are the norm, right? But what I think,
suppose, but on Earth, right? Maybe.
No, I mean, I think it might be the same, I don't know, in the universe. But I think what's important about what you were saying is that like Star Trek as a show has the opportunity to put on stage, you know, something that people think of even still today as abhorrent, or out of, not just not normal, or not not normal in the sense of like it's okay, but normal in the sense of like average. So homosexuality and bisexuality, these are not in the average. This is not the most people. They're they represent like a small group of people, but they're a group of people that are misunderstood and oppressed and like treated unfairly. And that's what needs to be more of, I think, in Star Trek, not being hit on. I don't think that's like the answer. I think it's more of like the plight of people who are on the outside, or in smaller numbers.
I wasn't talking about like I wasn't saying the answer is to have more more men hit on our male characters.
I'm just so argumentative today.
I know. You're like this with me. You're like this with me all the time.
What do you think, Corey? Am I off? Am I off the mark on this one?
I'll just put in my opinion first, like just to see what y'all think. Yes, I agree that there is Star Trek. Although we're getting better in terms of representation, like I went through like in my mind, I was like, okay, how many canon queer characters or species can I think of? And I came up with about 11 out of like hundreds upon thousands of characters. So I definitely agree that as a queer person myself, but also even if I was cisgender heterosexual, I would say this is ridiculous. Like, we're traveling through the galaxy and there's not one queer person until like Discovery. Like, it's
Right.
kind of ridiculous, you know, in terms of filmmaking. Um I think just in general there needs to be more visible queer characters. And I don't mean that like a character walks into a room and goes, "Hi, I'm queer," because that's my job. Like, I want like you know, the thing I loved about Stamets and Culber in Discovery was that they were gay. They were two gay men in a relationship together, but it was never like they weren't running around wearing rainbows. You know, it was never like this massive big deal, which I enjoyed, because there are some people, like, don't get me wrong, there are definitely people like me whom are very vocal about being queer, but there are also people that are more quiet about it. And so I think with the quiet group, that's where a lot of interpretation and fan fiction and slash fiction comes into play, where queer Trekkies that are so hungry for that representation, we read between the lines of dialogue, we look at characters' body language and the way that they speak, the way that they look at different characters. Like, I'm thinking of Kirk and Spock and Garrick and Bashir right now, where, you know, there have been so much, like, that train has like just been running forever, you know. But then also with Seven of Nine, Chakotay, Hugh and Elnor and Picard, Reed and Enterprise, Riker, Lwaxana Troy, Q. These are all characters that never canonically come out and say that they're queer, but as a queer person myself and a lot of other queer Trekkies, we can interpret them as being queer. And I always
Yeah.
say that if you're being served crumbs, you will turn them into a feast. Like, we have got such little representation. To be fair, don't get me wrong, we've gotten, at least as far as I can count, 11, and also like we're hopefully going to get more. Discovery season 3 is set to have a non-binary character joining the crew, which
Oh
I think
wow.
is amazing. Like, I'm non-binary myself, and I look at that, and plus the actor kind of looks like me a little bit. Like, someone DM me a picture and I was like, oh my god, am I in Star Trek now? Like
The actor.
That's amazing.
I think it's quite sweet to see that,
Hey,
because
hey,
you
that should
know.
be you. Do you have any aspirations for acting? You should be in Star
Oh,
Trek.
hell yeah.
That's awesome.
CBS hit me up, like. But I think that, you know, there are some shows that will have, as we call it, the token queer or the token gay character, where every single, you know, I'm thinking like in the 90s, like, you know, you would have a sitcom and there would be like the one gay guy that's like hitting on the main straight guy. That was our representation back in the day. That was all
Right.
we had. Or you had, um you know, in The Crying Game and The Danish Girl and Breakfast on Pluto, you had Boys Don't Cry. You had the tragic transgender character, where being transgender was this abhorrent, disgusting thing, and they're so sad, and most likely they die in the end. You know,
Right.
bury your gays and bury your queers is a very, very real concept. Like, Suddenly Last Summer, you know, as well, and like, to me, I think Star Trek is getting better at having more queer representation, but at the same time, in all of fiction and in real life in general, not just Star Trek, we have a long, long way to go, just personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think that until we have, how should I say this, canon-wise, until a character specifically says, "Oh, this girl" or "Oh, this man is hot" or whatever, and even then, I don't like to assume at all what kind of like sexual orientation they are. I would argue
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
maybe Reed. I would argue that maybe Reed is like. I would argue that he's hetero, simply because he does try to hit on women quite a bit, and when he refers to like older older flings that he had, it is always a woman. But I can like there's actually I feel like he played a sexual tension between him and that Mako in that third season of Enterprise.
But why
Yeah. Yeah.
it have to even be so what to something that intrigues me about, and I have some questions maybe about it too, but why does it have to be so binary as just like a man and a woman? Maybe Reed's sexuality is more complex, and that's what Corey was talking about, like the crumbs of that are there with that Mako relationship, right? So like, even though he mostly expresses interest in women, maybe there is an interest in men and others, because there's not just two genders, and so I think, that's the great thing about, I think that's what I love about the non-binary. For me, it's a movement, but I guess for you, Corey, it's real life. Is that it breaks all this like conditioning that we all have, which is just it's binary. Everything's like this or that. It's one or the other, or only two things. And real life, as we've experienced, is not like that at all. I mean, jokingly, I have always said like, oh, Michelle Pfeiffer is like the exception to my rule of like, being into men. But maybe that's not a joke. Maybe I am maybe I'm more complex than just being binary as well. Like maybe most humans are. That's an interesting kind of thing to think about. And I think that's like what I think that definitely needs to be more represented in Star Trek, because I think that is like evolutionarily an enlightened way of looking at things.
I think the Trill are a good first step in that direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because maybe it is
Yeah.
scary for producers or writers to like instantly kind of introduce non-binary human characters, that kind of stuff. So the good transition point is Trill, and if we're going to see a lot of Trill in the third season of Discovery, I think that can be a really good step.
Do we know anything about the character that is going to be non-binary in season 3 of Discovery, other than a picture?
I just saw a friend of mine on Twitter, because I don't watch trailers or anything. I try to go in blind, but a
Right.
friend of mine sent a picture of this character, and it was a close-up picture, and they were like, "Hey, I watched this trailer, and this person kind of looks like you." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of sweet." So I went and watched the trailer, and I read in the comments that like, oh, I'm so glad we're finally getting non-binary representation. And of course, immediately my ears perked up, and
Wow.
I went and researched about it. And as far as I know, now none of this is confirmed. Like we don't, like Discovery season 3 is still very much up in the air of when it'll get released and things like that. As far as I know, they are non-binary. They're gender neutral, using they them pronouns, and they present androgynously. So basically, all similar to me. But like they, as far as I know, they're a newcomer to Discovery. Like they come on board the ship. They're kind of like Bashir in DS9. Like they come on board and they're kind of wet behind, too green, too wet behind the ears, and they kind of have to learn their way on the ship and learn the rules and stuff like that. But as far as I know, that's all I could find personally.
The rumor
And
the
what?
rumor I see says that the character's name is Adira, a non-binary
Oh,
character described as incredibly intelligent and self-confident. The character was set to have a major role in one episode, with the potential to become a reoccurring throughout the rest of the season. Interesting.
oh, I want to see that. And with the Reed thing as well. Um, Initially, Reed in Enterprise was meant to be gay. Like
Oh, really?
they were gonna do it. Like they were gonna do it. But of course, Rick Berman, being the wonderful homophobe he is,
Is
he
he still?
called
Has he reformed? As I would like to think that Rick Berman has found found a better way of thinking, but I hope so.
yeah, well, like he didn't in the Outcast in TNG, he demanded that female actresses were hired because he didn't want Jonathan Frakes making out with a
Yeah,
male actor,
that's
and I,
100%
I
true.
think
Yeah.
that's total BS. Like, but
And
in
Jonathan
and
Frakes was all for it,
he
which was
wanted
cool.
it,
Yeah,
yeah,
he wanted that.
absolutely,
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
I
love
remember
that
that.
Jonathan Frakes was
yeah.
like totally like
Well, he
more
was
about
actually fighting
that
for it, wasn't he? He was
for it.
fighting
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
he
male
I think
he
so. I
actors.
really
believe
he
so.
really
Yeah.
wanted it. Yeah. But as far as I know, like uh Braga and basically everyone working on Enterprise besides Berman, they wanted like a canonical gay character. And imagine how incredible that would have been in like 2001 to have this
Oh my
character,
gosh.
a bridge member, come onto the bridge and say, "Hello, I'm gay." That would have been
I think
incredible.
it would have changed like no, and I don't say this lightly, but I think it would have changed the world, like, because a lot of
Oh,
people
absolutely,
watching
yeah.
Star Trek would have been very empowered to feel differently. Like I can speak only for myself in this situation, but like I grew up struggling to express my feelings and to express I didn't exactly hide it. I was a little stronger willed than to just say I was heterosexual, but like I definitely was the quiet ones you referred to earlier, the ones that are a little
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
fearful of speaking out. And it took me a long time. But had Star Trek done something like that, I would have been so empowered when I was in high school, and I would have probably taken different actions in my life looking back. I have no regrets, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
it could have changed a lot of people's paths in how they express themselves if it had been done. So maybe it's one of Rick Berman's regrets.
This
Yeah,
this this may sound
absolutely.
pretty this may sound
Like,
pretty mean towards Enterprise, but I also think that it would have helped the show be better remembered. But
oh,
like
absolutely,
as a
yeah.
Star Trek show, I feel like Enterprise doesn't really bring anything. Which is it's I mean I know it may sound mean, but I would argue that
You're
every
terrible.
I'm sorry, but every Star Trek show
I'm
I
ejecting
think
you from the fandom.
I think every Star Trek show has something new to offer in terms of representation or in terms of kind of social commentary. I don't think Enterprise has that much. Like
It's true. Yeah,
there's the odd
there's just an
episodes, yes, specific episodes with
there's an
Sim.
Asian woman and a black man. That's all you
Yeah,
have.
but I
Like,
mean it's
you
like
know,
yeah,
like,
all right. We barely see them.
it's
Um,
true. They're just there. Like,
they exist, right? Yeah.
I
oh God, that's so
I have
sad.
to point out, and I know you probably hate dating your episodes, but this episode is being recorded on the 26th anniversary of All Good Things, the end of
It
Star Trek
is,
Next
yes.
Generation. And I was supposed to do something today, but I chose not to because I'm not ready for my. I conclude actually. That's the only episode left on my rewatch on my channel. So just a quick plug to say that I'm conscripting this episode as my official Starfleet Boy All Good Things like celebration episode. So I'm stealing your
Wow.
podcast, Sean.
Oh my goodness.
I'm okay with that.
It's
I
an
just
honor.
hijacked it.
Yeah.
All right, you can have it back. You can have it back.
It's fine. It's fine. It's great.
But
I think as well with the read thing, like everyone was on board with it. Everyone was like, if you watch, I've read like a few interviews and stuff. Everyone was on board besides Burnham, like, and they tried to keep it secret from him. Like, even
Wow.
though he was like the showrunner, like, which I don't understand. Like, how can you keep that big of a secret? But I guess it's just because he was so homophobic. But
It's
they
a
tried to keep
mutiny.
it secret. Yeah, they tried to keep it secret from him. And whenever Dominic Keating was cast in the part, they told him before they told Burnham, which I think was very, very smart. But like, they told Dominic Keating, and he wasn't really big on it. Like, I mean, keep in mind, this is early 2000s, a time where, like, sure, drag was really big, but that was like our main queer representation was like drag, and like there were a few canonical queer characters on television,
Thing,
but really
things
it was
things
nowhere
were
near
always
where it
kept
was now.
lighthearted too and campy and almost
Oh
like if you were
yeah,
making fun
yeah,
of it rather
absolutely.
than you couldn't really have it was very rare to have like major it was they were all fighting up I go back to that thing about how we're all conditioned, like truly we are all conditioned by television
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
society. And so yeah, partly Rick Berman, I feel sorry for him, but I think I think it's disappointing as the showrunner of Star Trek, which is supposed to be this enlightened, TV show that pushes the envelope in every way possible. That he had those feelings. That's sad, and that's sad to me too.
Yeah, exactly. Like
But what were you gonna say about Dominic Keating?
he was very much, as far as I know, he wasn't really big on playing a queer character because, of course, he's a cis straight man himself, and also, like you said, like queer characters at this time were very much like they were comedic. Like it was always like a gay guy in like super tight clothing would like walk in and sort of flirt with the main character, but it would just be for like one episode and then he would just go away. You know, like that still was very prevalent at the time. So to have like a canonical queer character on the bridge, yes, it would have been a big deal, but also in a way, as far as I could tell, he was kind of scared about taking that step, you know, of like being like this landmark for the queer community, being a straight man himself playing this gay character. As far as I know, he was more like scared than homophobic, whereas Burnham was just completely like, oh, we can't do it, like it's a family show, we need to keep it PG, and which I think is ridiculous. Like I hate this whole like thought of like queer content in and of itself is inherently sexualized. I hate that because I'm asexual. I don't I don't do anything. I don't experience any romantic or sexual attraction, but I am still queer. And people still say to me, "Oh, you're too young," and this and that and stuff. But I think that like if I had seen, you know, I mean, Stamets and Culber in Discovery really helped me, you know, like seeing them and having it not be this big deal, like that really helped me because I was in my questioning phase at that time, and it really helped me. And to be fair, I was not born whenever Enterprise was out. Like I was born in the second season of Enterprise. But if I saw that, I watched Enterprise before I watched Discovery, and if I saw Reed, a canonical gay man, that would have helped me so much, you know.
That's
But
cool.
what are you gonna do, you know?
But you know what is cool, I think, and kudos to Discovery for doing this. It's like not only is there representation, but the performers themselves are also queer.
Yes,
So it's like even
absolutely. I
better
love
than
that.
I think it's I like I'm a big a proponent of like, you know, if you're going to cast someone from Pakistan in a film or in something, try your hardest to find a Pakistani performer so that you can bring an
Absolutely, yeah.
authenticness to the role, you know, that shows that, because I think it's not impossible. I mean, it's harder to go out there and search for these, you know, performers of these very specific like, you know, things. But like
Yeah.
I do love that the show took the time to cast Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz in those parts, and they just bring so much. The two of them just bring two amazing kind of groups together as well, which is pretty awesome, and show representation on screen for a lot more than just queer folks.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was one
Because
of the
like
it was one of the things that I praised about Discovery. Like I people know that I have my beef with Discovery, but I always go back to the brushing of the teeth. I like that. I like that
that's a great scene.
you
That is
Yeah.
a great
you show us a relationship between two characters. It doesn't matter, you know, who or what they are. They're just two characters. They're in a relationship, and it doesn't have to be sexualized. They're brushing their teeth. This is a casual, very casual, normal day, right? And I like that. I thought
Yeah.
that was the best way to do it.
That was a great scene, yeah. As well with having queer actors play queer characters. Um, it, I'm sure everyone's aware that Hollywood thinks that to play a transgender character, you need to put a man in drag to make him play a trans woman. Like that's a big thing of like, you know, in Robsy Nesbitt, Breakfast on Pluto, The Danish Girl, Dallas Buyers Club, The Crying Game, all of it, cisgender men, you put makeup and a wig and a dress on them, and automatically they're playing a trans woman, which further perpetuates this myth that transgender people are just their assigned gender at birth, acting like, you know, the quote the other gender, whenever no, we're
So
not, we are the gender that we are. And so seeing two gay men play two gay characters, that was huge for you know, a queer person and a trans person like me. That was a really big deal because it's like we're not faking it, we're not acting, like we just are who we are. I love that.
how do we respond to the, I think it's a valid critique, which is, well, what if you don't want, like, let's say you're, let's say you're an actor and you're trans and you make it big in a movie for and playing a trans character, right? But let's say now as a performer, your next role you want to try to represent, you want to try to like not represent but like perform a role that is a character that's heterosexual. Now, then there's these people that argue like, well, okay, well then why wouldn't you cast a heterosexual person in that role if you're gonna say cast trans people in roles? Why wouldn't you do the same for a heterosexual? How do we argue about that? Like, how do we consider that, and what do we think of that?
Yeah, I at least I always say that first and foremost you should just get the best actor, like the best person, the person who can say the lines the best, the person who can,
Absolutely.
deliver it the best. But also as like a little cherry on top, if they are part of that minority group, even better,
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that inherently having cisgender heterosexual actors playing queer parts is a bad thing. It's not always. Like David Duchovny playing Denise Bryson in Twin Peaks. Like I think that's a great performance. Cillian Murphy as Kitten Braden in Breakfast on Pluto. Both cisgender heterosexual male actors playing transgender women. I think both of those performances are terrific. And there have been throughout history, there have been a few straight actors playing gay and queer roles here and there that I think are funny. But once again, those are like sitcom, and it's like, it doesn't really count, But I think overall, just get the best actor, because don't get me wrong, I would love if actors were part of the minority group of the character. I would love that, but I always say that just get the best actor. That's just personally my thing. I want as much representation as possible, but also at the same time, like, I want a good actor. If you can have both, that's great. But like, if you can just have one or the other, I'm fine with that too.
Right.
Don't have it be a limitation, right? If you can do your
Absolutely, yeah.
best, if you can do your best, my beef is the way Hollywood represents France and French people, because of course that's what I know, and I know like every time someone speaks French, it's just absolutely atrocious. They've either taken someone from the United States that's trying their best to speak French, and every time they go to Paris or something, there's like a mime. I've never seen a single mime in 12 years in France.
What are you
My
talking about?
issue is whenever
I saw like 7 months. No, I'm just kidding. I've never seen any.
It's like if you can find someone that speaks French, and if you can find a French actor, especially in today's day, right? Like there are actors from all parts of the globe in the United
yeah.
States. There are actors of all styles, right? Tall ones, fat ones, small ones. It's just anything. So if you can find the actor, but then if you can't, or if someone else is doing such a good job, then don't limit yourself. Just pick the actor that does the best job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It's such a tough thing because I think I'm a little bit now that now that I see some of the and I didn't really know that Rick. I guess I kind of blacked it out or something that Rick Berman is a homophobe, but I kind of knew it. But so today's episode is kind of like a shocker for me in terms of like reassessing my values and things like that.
Yeah.
And Rick Berman, if you're listening to this, hey. You better make
Go
some
away!
statements.
I hear you.
Or make some statements and atone for the sins of the past. But to me, that's like the toughest thing, and I guess ultimately, logically, you're right. Like to the best performer goes the role. But yeah, it's just such a hard. That's kind of like the little logic puzzle for me because it's like, well, how do you make it fair and equal and like
I guess
things
it's
like
because
that.
it
And
wasn't. Well, I would say it still isn't fair. That's the thing, isn't it? As Corey puts it, cis hetero men, um, they've always had the possibility to play not only heterosexual men but also gay men. They've also had the possibility to play transgender roles and what have you. Whereas transgender actors, homosexual actors haven't had that same, I suppose, chance or that same possibility up until now. and
Yeah.
even maybe
in
perhaps
Hollywood
today.
of the past, many gay men played heterosexual parts and did it really, really well. Like
Hmm.
you know, the who
Even
comes
today, I think Barney Stinson is one of the best hetero characters, and of course Neil Patrick Harris is gay.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great example.
I have
He's
no
a
I have no problem with queer actors playing cishet roles. I will say that because, like, honestly, I feel like queer people, we can all relate to the idea of acting because, in a way, we before we come out, we are actors.
true.
We're not professionals. Believe me, I was not a professional actor at all. I would love to be, but I'm not. But like before I came out, I did everything I could to hide my queerness. Like I kept my hair long, I wore girls' clothing, I love, you know, pink. Like I just kind of embodied this idea of like, okay, I'm a girl and I'm gonna get married and have kids. Like I sort of, you know, I was acting from a very, very young age, like probably 7 or 8. And it was kind of at 16, I was like, right, I can't keep this up. And then I ultimately came out, and you know, coming out's like the happiest moment of your life, at least to me. Don't get me wrong, I experienced so much harassment and abuse and assault and stuff, but inside of me it was the most happy moment. But
Yeah.
I feel like now being out as queer, I almost understand cishet people better than I ever have, because I'm kind of the outsider looking in, and I become like hyper aware of the things that they do and societal, you know, the ridiculous societal standards of, like, you know, as you said, it's binary. It's just male and female, that's it, and you have to be straight and you have to get married to have kids. And
Right.
so queer people are, you know, the scientists dissecting the frog. We are the people, you know, on the outside looking in. And so, like, I'm fine with queer people, you know, as you said, like Neil Patrick Harris playing that part. I'm fine with that, absolutely fine with that. And even like trans people playing cisgender roles, there's very, very few examples. But if a trans actor did play a cis role, I wouldn't mind. Like, I wouldn't really care. You know, once again, it's all about like having the best actor possible. But once again, if you're able to have representation, you know, have it, you know.
That's so I think that's like what the world I'd like to live in is one where it happens naturally and organically, but it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. It's not like intentional, and
Mm.
people just like, you know, kind of appreciate you for who and what you are, and that instead of like assumptions, people are curious and more into discovery and like you know, something I think Gene Roddenberry said is that in the future, what is the difference is that now people are afraid of differences, whereas in the future people celebrate differences.
Yeah,
And I think that would be kind
absolutely.
of like that's the gist of that kind of mentality.
Well, that's the whole idea of the Federation, isn't it, in Starfleet? It's kind of like embracing all of these differences because having
Not
all of
just
these
embracing
differences.
but celebrating them,
Well,
which
I
is
mean,
a difference, I
Yeah.
think. You know, it's
having
like
them is okay. I find embracing and celebrating the same thing, but
okay, fine.
in the context, what I'm trying to say is, if you have all of these
Next time we're
differences,
celebrating something, I'll embrace you, and
oh,
then
there
we'll
you
see
go.
how we feel about
I'm fine with that.
it. Aw.
What I mean is,
I
if
think they're welcoming. They're happy to
Yes,
have
yeah,
difference. They're
yes,
happy to have
yeah,
diversity and happy to have change. Like the
yes.
Federation, like, okay, yes, they get threatened to destroy the Earth and all life in the galaxy in every single Star Trek episode, in every single movie. Like it feels like it's going to collapse at some point. But I do like that they seem very accepting and welcoming and embracing.
mm,
Like
because they use those differences to their advantage. That's the thing, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
You embrace, you welcome, you celebrate differences. The objective ultimately is because you're trying to explore, you're trying to go out there, and if you have the knowledge from like all of these different opinions, all of these different kind of different differences, these different people that you have, then that can only be used to your advantage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's the whole concept of the cage. Like if you restrict yourself to a box, if you restrict yourself to just what you know, you're gonna live in a cage your whole life. You know,
Right.
just like Pike. Like if you open your mind and open yourself up to the possibility that, hey, queer people exist. people of color exist, women exist, disabled people exist. Like there's so many people out there, but yet we still restrict ourselves to, oh, we'll just have a good looking guy cishet be the lead of every single show ever made and every character ever made. I think we as a society, we put ourselves in boxes, and we almost pride ourselves of living in boxes. And I know that people say, oh, why is there so many labels and terms in the queer community? Like, it's, it is LGBTQIA plus, and there's a whole load of labels and terms out there.
Sub-labels, right, yeah.
Absolutely. And you can absolutely, I choose to use queer just because it's easier. Like, I can just say, hi, I'm queer, and then that's it. But believe me, I have friends that really embrace those labels. But I think no matter what you choose to describe yourself as, you are opening your mind to it. You're opening your mind to the fact that, like, hey, there's so many different people out there, rather than seeing it as oh, you had to be cishet and you have to be white and be able-bodied and make a bunch of money and things like that. It's like, it's a rainbow, it's a kaleidoscope, and I see that's the way society should be,
and
where it's more shades of gray rather than black and white.
And we have the capacity to be all those things. Every one of us, no matter how we identify, has the capacity within us to, if you can see something, if you can understand it, it shows that there's like at least the capacity within you, which I think humans, I think, this might be a little, naive or overly optimistic, but I think we all have the potential to be really wonderful, and the best versions of ourselves. And I think we can also evolve over time. Like one thing that really you reminded me when you were telling us that you identify as asexual. I identified as asexual once too, and I forgot, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I evolved and I changed.
Well,
and like,
I was gay once. It's fine. Like,
yeah, yeah, no, and it just reminded me that like I myself, when you said, oh, we kind of pride ourselves on being in boxes, it's like, yeah, I kind of like always kind of shove in the face of others, like, yes, I'm a gay man, like this is who I am. But I forgot that I myself have evolved over time, and there may have been a time where I, even though it was a lie, I definitely thought of myself as heterosexual as well. So there's so many complexities, and it's really refreshing to hear you, a person so like you're so eloquent in the way you express your thoughts. So I really appreciate hearing your thoughts on this.
Oh, thank you. Believe
You're
me,
welcome.
I as well played sort of the label game. I was, I went from cisgender heterosexual female to cis asexual female to gay trans guy to now I'm non-binary and asexual aromantic. And I still use non-binary and asexual aromantic whenever specifically talking about gender or sexuality. But if we're just talking about queerness, I use queer just because I like the broadness, I like the openness of it. And I find that I was my most kind of in denial about myself and the most depressed about myself whenever I tried to put myself in boxes and use these labels and be like, oh, I'm this. Oh, no, wait, I'm actually this, and like it was, the past few years have been insane for me in terms of discovering myself. But I like queer, and I like the idea of, the universe being a kaleidoscope, being like, like just leave it all behind. Like, stop using words, use feelings, and just show, don't tell. I love that.
I feel like I'm liking Riker a lot more right now, because I think that's kind of Riker's bag. That's like Riker's world when you think
I was
about.
gonna say, this is how you see Star Trek, isn't it? This is how you see romance and basically anything in Star Trek. You see it exactly like he described, exactly like it was described there.
Yeah.
What, through Riker?
Not through Riker.
Or through a kaleidoscope?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because every time we talk about any kind of romance or anything on an episode of Starfleet Boy, he'll come around and say something like, "Oh, but everyone's so open, and this is the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I think Riker, I personally myself, this is getting back to interpretation. I always theorize Riker to be pansexual,
Yeah.
which
Right.
basically means that you love regardless of gender, because and also Kirk as well. Like
I
they're
see
like
that in
they're
Kirk
the
too,
pan
and Gene
icons of
Roddenberry
Star
kind of,
Trek.
yeah. Gene Roddenberry
Yeah.
kind of puts weight to that in his writing in the novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There's really
Oh
strong
yeah.
subtext
Absolutely. Yeah.
that is pansexual. You're very correct, I think, in that. It's very controversial for some people, but I love it.
I
It
love it.
would
I
What do
make
you
love it
think?
sense to
too.
assume that everyone is pansexual, or that most people are pansexual in the future.
Absolutely. Well, not entirely. Well, there's obviously a lot of people theorize that Kirk and Riker are pan. Um, Andrew Robertson, who plays Garrick, Terry Farrell, Jadzia Dax, and also Jerry Ryan, who plays Seven of Nine. All of them have said that their characters are pansexual. It's never confirmed in the canon, but from an actor's perspective, they played those characters as queer, as pansexual, and I
I
love
love
that.
that.
And also, not everyone in the universe is pansexual. Rene Auberjonois, rest in peace, who played Odo, he said that Odo was asexual. So I got something.
Wow.
I got some representation.
Yes, that's true. And a really
Finally,
cool
my
character.
little shred of hope. Yeah, Odo's my man. I love Odo, and
Well, there
although
go.
he is romantically attracted predominantly to women, but Renee has said that he is asexual, which I love. I think that's great, and
That
he
is
plays it
fantastic.
well because the asexual, getting back to stereotypes, the asexual stereotype is that you're emotionless, like you're like a robot basically, because oh my god, how could anyone live without sex, and people think you're emotionless, you're a robot, there's something wrong with you, like it's a result of
It's
trauma,
true.
and
Often
stuff like
asexual
that.
people are portrayed as android like, and
Exactly.
Data, I think, is actually, oddly enough, he fits into that stereotype of asexual because of those same stereotypes. Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, like Data, a lot of people theorize Data and Spock to be asexual, which I personally don't really see. Like emotions don't how you emotionally articulate yourself does not determine your
Right,
sexuality. Like
right,
believe me,
100%.
I am a very like uh, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I like to think I'm a very bubbly, like exciting person. Like I'm a very passionate person about things, especially
I
queerness
can
and
agree with that.
especially Star Trek. Like, but asexuality, whenever people hear that I'm asexual or I tell them, they get confused because they're like, oh, like you're not okay, so you're not a robot, you're not emotionless, you're not traumatized, and you're not going for a phase. Like, that those are all the stereotypes, and it's very unfortunate. And Odo, although yes, he's extremely grouchy, he's very grumpy, and like he's basically like an old man, but he's also at the same time, he does not see his potential asexuality. It's never made canon, but he never sees his asexuality as a weakness. He sees it as, I'm asexual. Okay, move on. I can still date. I can still be romantically attracted. Of course, obviously, he flirted a little bit with Loaxana, which I personally enjoyed. But he of course ends up with Kira, and I think that's lovely. Like I think their relationship is really lovely. And again, Kira is a character. Some people theorize her as bisexual. Some people theorize her as pansexual and stuff like that. And I think it's a really lovely relationship. And as an asexual myself, I love seeing characters be passionate about their asexuality and not seeing it as a detriment. Like in Sex Education season 2, there's an asexual character, and although she's initially quite wobbly about it, at the end she does become passionate about it, and I really appreciated that.
I don't know if you watch BoJack Horseman.
Yes. Oh my
I
god, I
Todd,
forgot to
Todd,
fantastic.
Todd,
mention that.
Todd is an asexual character, but he's the most passionate, most
Exactly. It's done so
overjoyed
well.
person in
Yeah.
every aspect of his life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is asexual representation done to a T.
Oh, I'll have to
That is
watch it.
brilliant. It is so good. Once
It's
again,
also a brilliant show, just generally speaking.
yeah, it's great. Like, once again, he is romantically attracted, to women, but he is asexual, and he's so kind of funny and passionate and stuff, and I love seeing that, because asexuals, we get a bad rap. We do. I'm not saying that we get like I'm not trying to play the oppression Olympics by saying, oh no, asexuals get more of a bad rap. No, gay men get more of a bad rap. But asexuals, we do, like, people see us as, quote, not queer enough because we can, like, pass as straight people, which is not true. Believe me, asexuals, we are seen as robots. We are seen as, like, oh, how can you possibly not want to have sex? Like, and it's just the way that we are. Like, our brains just are that way. You can't people see it as, like, oh, you need to be fixed in some way. It's like conversion therapy, where, like, they think that, like, by asking you all these incredibly invasive questions and telling you all this, horrible stuff will change you. Like, you are queer, and of, like, you can't, it's not like a switch that will turn off in your brain. You can be fluid in your identity, but if you're queer, you never stop being queer. Like, it's for life. It's a subscription for life, and I love it.
I have not seen BoJack Horseman. I've got to see it now because
It's great. I love it.
so for me when I was going through considering asexuality for myself, I remember feeling almost though the opposite of, like, where I felt kind of sad. I guess maybe it's because I was very young, but I felt kind of satisfied that I didn't have the same urges, or that I wasn't expressing the
Oh
same urges.
yeah, it's great. I love it.
That
You
yeah,
so much
it's
more
an
time for
interesting way
yourself.
of thinking. Yeah, you do have a lot of time for yourself. It's true, but it doesn't. But I like, and I never considered this, and I think that's something now I have to think about, is that I never considered that, like, as an asexual practitioner of asexuality, that I could have a romantic relationship, and now I'm thinking about it, and, like, you could, if you find someone of equal mind and intention as yourself, like, you could have a romantic relationship and explore it within the kind of parameters of asexuality. That's interesting. You-
Yeah, yeah.
I'd
Like,
never considered
I
that. I
yeah,
wish there was a
I
character now on Star Trek like that. That's pretty
that
cool.
would be great.
Like out,
Well,
like
Odo,
overtly like
Odo,
that.
you've got Odo.
Yeah, that's true. We do have Odo. It's true.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting that you brought up that the interpretation from the performers. I put strong emphasis on performance in my enjoyment of Star Trek, and I also think that, like, I often will say, like, things like, well, one should retire a character if that character's played really well, and this is, like, kind of like something that I've had to, like, renege on, because I enjoyed Zachary Quinto's performance as Spock, who's an example of a character that lives on beyond the performer. And I really
Yeah.
enjoyed Ethan Peck's performance of Spock. And so I kind of, like, see that as, like, something interesting, in this conversation of, like, how these subsequent performers played Spock. And it's funny to me that, like, I think Leonard Nimoy always played Spock as queer, in a way, like, maybe it was unintentionally. And I see
Yeah.
Ethan Peck doing that as well, but I didn't see Zachary Quinto. To me, Zachary Quinto made Spock
Oh yeah,
in,
no way. No way.
like,
And then that
that's
horrible relationship with Uhura,
It's
like,
a very
oh
different
my
character.
god.
On
Like,
many, many
right.
levels, I think that Kelvin Spock is completely different to Prime Spock. I mean, he's more in
mhm.
touch with his emotions or his human side as well. He's getting angry at Khan. He's I mean, there's all of these different. He's just not the same character on
Yeah.
every level.
Don't get me wrong, like, I think Zachary Quinto, I think he's a fabulous actor. And I really like his Spock. But my main issue, it's very much, it seems that they are, as we call it, straight washing, which basically means where
Mm,
you take a character that, and I agree with you that Spock is definitely, he can be interpreted as queer. As far as I know, it was not intentional, but he can definitely be interpreted as queer, as potentially being I always personally saw him as homo-romantic asexual, because like him and Kirk, they definitely have some romantic things going on, you know, which I always liked, I always enjoyed. But to have Star Trek 2009 and, as I call him, Jar Jar Abrams, just, you know, wiping.
Strong words, strong words.
Yeah, no, like to have JJ just like take, you know, wash Spock of his queerness and pit him with Uhura, which never made sense to me. It very much seemed like, oh no, guys, don't worry, he's straight. He's straight. He's
Yeah.
with Uhura. He cannot be queer. And to me, that just seemed like really, really, like you had to. And Zachary Quinto is gay. Like you could have had Spock be canonically gay, you know. And I do like that Ethan kind of drops some hints here and there. Once again, Spock is never made canonically queer, but I do like the hints that Nimoy and Ethan put. But I like in the reboot films, I feel really bad for Zachary because, you know, and once again, he's never talked about wanting Spock to be gay, but I think there was a real missed opportunity there. You know, or at the very least, don't have him in a relationship at all. You know, don't have him with Uhura at all. Don't have him in a relationship
with
at
the
all.
character, right? To be consistent with the character that we've seen.
Exactly. Like
I
Spock
never thought I'd say
occasionally.
this.
Oh,
I know. I never thought I'd defend J.J. Abrams, and it is really not a pleasure for me.
Oh,
But
oh,
there are like a few very small situations where Uhura in the original series is kind of hitting on Spock, and
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's where they went and got it. Now, from a representation standpoint, I can't say, but I will say that Hollywood has this, in my opinion, terrible thing of always trying to put a romantic story in every single movie, and
Yes.
sometimes they don't
Oh
need it.
my god, I
Sometimes you
hate
don't
it.
need it, and it's like it feels like more, even more than trying to make Spock heterosexual. It just felt like they were trying to make a love story um, with
Where it
essentially
didn't need to
their
be.
only female character.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they're like, who was she interested in? Oh, kind of Spock, I guess. Let's do Spock. And it's just like you didn't need that story at all. It was terribly executed. What they should have done is taken Sulu and his husband and done that from the very beginning.
Oh,
That
that
would have
would have
been
been
interesting.
great. That would have been fantastic. I would love that because
Yeah.
I thought that was beautifully handled.
Just
Because like
that final moment.
he never says it. He never ever says it. He never mentions it. He just hugs him and then they
Yeah,
walk away. I thought
and
that was lovely. That was so lovely. That's why you
that's
do it. You don't make a big deal out of it.
no,
Thought
because
that
that
was great.
scene, as small as it was, is way better than everything between Spock and Uhura in the three
Oh my
movies.
god, yeah, absolutely.
It is. Uh, I was surprised. I I remember vaguely that George Takei was kind of against that scene. He thought
Yeah,
of, in
yeah.
his mind, he thought of Sulu as a heterosexual. I think, even though interestingly enough, another homosexual
Yeah,
identifying as
once again, he's
homosexual
gay,
actor,
yeah.
yeah. So it's
There
really
is there is an
really
argument
interesting.
behind what he said. I don't know, like, okay, so what do you guys think about this? All right, essentially, what George Takei was arguing was that Sulu in the Prime timeline is heterosexual, and then so they've now established that Sulu in the Kelvin timeline is gay, and George Takei, from what I understand, was fed up or was not happy with the way that it's kind of like nurture over nature, like nurture changed the sexual orientation of the character. It's like
Yeah.
depending on what kind of timeline you grew up and what kind of environment you grew up, then your sexual orientation can be changed. George Takei seemed to say that you're born gay or you're born heterosexual, whatever. But so Sulu should have been born heterosexual in basically both timelines. That was the
Well,
argument behind it.
I
well,
think that
Sulu was
that
never
that's
like.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say that goes back to this like conditioning we have of binary thinking. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
more
yeah.
likely that nurture would kind of affect you if your spectrum is large or wide, let's say, right? Like if you're not, if you're a person who's more to categorize you who's more in the bisexual kind of, like um sexuality expression, then that person could go either way, and society could influence that person to choose one path or the other. And so there is a degree of like, you know, it's a hard thing to just say that nurture, and it's people often say again that binary thought, like nurture versus nature. Well, why can't it just be a little soup of both, right? You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Like Sulu in the prime timeline, he was never established as straight. It, to be fair, he was never really established as anything really. Like it's like in
Yeah.
every episode they were like making up new things. Like he's a botanist, and then he's a gun collector, and then he's the captain of the Excelsior. Like that's really the only things that come to my mind.
We don't get
but
It's because
canonically.
he looks at female characters. I think on like 1 or 2 episodes when they're on the surface of a planet, he'll
The
maybe
oh
glance
yeah,
at
because that
female
automatically
characters.
makes him straight.
Oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I think maybe George Takei
But
was a bit frustrated about how he wasn't allowed to make Sulu gay. Because we know that George Takei was fighting for Sulu to be gay during the run of the original series, but Gene Roddenberry said, "I
right.
can't do that. We'll get cancelled if we do this. I have no problem with doing
Yeah.
it, but if we do it, we'll be cancelled." And so
Mhm.
maybe it felt kind of like maybe a betrayal of some kind that this new Sulu is allowed to be gay, allowed, dare I say, to be gay.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a interesting perspective that you have there. I'd love to know what I would love to know what George Takei thinks of that. That's a really cool point. Because those are definitely feelings you can have. I think though that Generations does a really good job of leaving it ambiguous so that people can decide on their own. Because you see his daughter, but you don't know what happened. Maybe Sulu came out later, in non-canon, but like it's possible that between Star Trek 6 and Generations, Sulu came out, and in prime timeline Sulu, as you like to call him, I don't like that designation,
You
but
don't like
you know
the timeline labels.
timeline labels, I hate them. but but it would be neat that to think that, and certainly George Takei could do a short trek where we see older Sulu maybe
Oh
with
my God, that'd be
his
amazing.
husband and his daughter, and that would be awesome because short treks can do it.
Yeah, I mean the only that was what I was going to say. The only thing that establishes Prime Sulu as straight, well, quote potentially straight, is that he has a daughter, and so immediately that once again that's very much straight washing of like, oh, don't worry guys, he's safe because he's straight because he has a
Right.
daughter,
And
and
I do
so
like that Star Trek Beyond turned that on its head, which is pretty
But as
cool.
you were
yeah,
saying,
sure,
he
that's
could
quite
very well
sweet, yeah.
be asexual and aromantic and still have a daughter because adoption very well exists in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
Sulu
also
Yeah,
all
has
kinds
no
of things,
partner.
like you could probably grow babies and eggs in the future and not even need a partner. You can probably raise a child on your own, and it's considered there's nothing to it. Like no one thinks that's weird, you know.
yeah, it could be literal asexual reproduction. Like
Right.
not asexual in terms of orientation, but asexual in
Mm,
terms of like, he had this daughter basically by himself.
yeah.
I
Right.
think that's kind of cool. But I definitely I personally always saw Sulu as being gay or homosexual, because there are a few episodes where he kind of like, isn't it in the Naked Time, where there are a few episodes where he kind of looks at like the some of the male officers, sometimes Chekhov.
Oh,
he
that's
he looks at
fantastic.
man he looks at man in like a slightly sort of flirty sort of way. It's never like established, but I always kind of saw it as like, okay, there's something going on with him. I personally always saw him as like being into guys personally. But I think that with George, I think it was more kind of emotional for him because he was fighting to have Sulu be gay, and then this new Sulu gets to be gay. After George spent like years fighting himself of like coming out as a gay man, that in a way he could be feeling kind of envious in a sense. Once again,
Right.
I don't want to put words in George's mouth, but I think for him
Or
it was more
feelings, yeah.
it was more emotional. It was kind of like, well, why does he get to be out? Why does this
Mm.
Sulu get to be out? I was fine
It's
with that. I thought it
bittersweet
was beautifully
because
handled, you know.
it's
Yeah.
bittersweet because at the same time we do feel that way as well. Because it would have been nice to see George Takei like get that, you know, imagine, and that's another, you know, that's another
Imagine.
imagine if like had the original series done something as bold as that, imagine the
Wow, that
impact
that would
that
have
would have
really
happened
put
on
it ahead of
society,
its
you know,
time.
like yeah, that would have been like
Yeah.
out of the for queer folk, that would have been amazing.
It's fun because in a conversation we did recently, this has nothing to do with representation, but in a conversation that we did recently, um, what's his name? Is it Brian? I forget his name. I'm sorry. Father friend. Mentioned that
Yes,
Strange New Worlds is essentially the Cage pilot being picked up 50, 56, 57 years later.
right.
And the Sulu thing with the Kelvin timeline is kind of the same thing. It's like something that was being fought for in the 60s is coming to realization now. I like it. I like that Star Trek has come so far that now all of these ideas, all of these concepts that were going on right in the beginning, but that maybe didn't work out because they didn't want a gay character or they didn't want number one being female. But now we can do them, and now Star Trek is getting it, and it's not a reboot. It's still part of the same
I
ongoing story.
I hope
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery season 3 gets even more diverse in terms of like what we see on screen and what's shown and like what becomes canon and you know in Star Trek. I really hope it's wild and weird. Like, you know, it just, you know, that to me that would be the coolest thing. And now that it's set like 1,000 years in the future, it could be wild and weird and no one can argue about it, which is wonderful.
I want to see
It's like
races
there's no
mixed together. That's what I want to see. From the trailer that we saw, we don't really have that. I mean, from the first trailer that we saw of Discovery Season 3, we get very straightforward Andorians, very straightforward Trill. I feel like so far in the future, everyone would be all mixed together. Would have like
Sean,
Vulcan looking Andorians, that kind of stuff.
did we learn somewhere? Is this the thing I'm remembering wrong? Did we learn somewhere that Andorians actually have 5 genders? Can express that they
So this isn't
express
this
Oh
five
isn't
yeah, they
genders?
do.
this
They
isn't
do,
canonically
yeah.
established on screen. But there's novels that establish. Well, I think there's one novel that said that they had 4 genders, and then other novels kind of ran with it. So like the kind of extended universe of Star Trek has been playing around with the fact and using the fact that Andorians have 4 genders for a very long time now.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. It was four
I
lights,
think
4 genders, not 5.
I think it's
I
4. I think
think
it's 4.
I I think to be fair, I have not watched Enterprise in a long, long time, but I think there's an episode where Shran says that they do their marriages, like they do multiple marriages at a time, and it's sort of hinting to the fact that like Andorians like are queer and polyamorous and stuff like that. You know, because like wasn't like Phlox's the Denobulans are polyamorous as
Right.
well.
They
You know,
are. That's
yeah. So
right.
like yeah,
Yeah.
and by the way, Phlox is another character. I totally saw him as pan. Totally
Mhm.
saw him as pansexual polyamorous.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I
That's
think that's
interesting.
really
It's like
good representation.
males seem to marry females in Denobulan culture.
Mm.
But that might just be tradition. Like we have no indication against the fact that like the two males, which are the two husbands of the wife, don't ever get together.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean the point of believe me, I'm not polyamorous. This is just what I know from talking to other poly people. But it's all like everyone's together. Like it's a consensual relationship where all the members of the party are together and all of them are in love, you know. So
And they
the
have different
Denobulans
dynamics. Some of them may have non-sexual dynamics, and some may have very,
absolutely,
very like
yeah.
sexual
Absolutely.
dynamics. And it's like, yeah, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I always thought that I was personally felt that the Denobulans were very queer and very open-minded and very
Hmm.
fluid with their sexuality and their beliefs and their traditions and stuff. I really like that.
I have to say I have blank spaces where it comes to Enterprise and Voyager, and I'm starting to fill them in, and I'm really excited because there's these things that like
I'm so
I'm gonna
happy you're doing your
discover and
catch up.
Yeah, it's true. I'm gonna be one day I'll be a completionist. It'll be very soon. But yeah, that I forgot that. I do remember seeing hints of that in the episodes of Enterprise I have seen, and I hope they really explore that more in the later seasons. It's very cool.
We're over an hour, so we're probably nearing the end of this. But I did want to mention one last thing. I did want to talk about the mirror universe a bit,
Oh,
specifically Deep Space Nine, and I wanted to
oh,
know.
that's rough.
So there we go. There's the answer I'm looking for. As part of the LGBT community, how do you guys feel about the representation that they did in the mirror universe? Is it just token stuff? Is it you guys? Go ahead. I want to know.
I
Kira,
think it's
Kira
like
specifically, I think is the
I
topic.
think I think that for me, when it was happening in the moment at the time, I was extremely excited about it. But there's always this kind of disappointment that comes with the idea that like, well, why does Kira have to be, uh, you know, like that in a universe where everyone's Nazis? Like, why can't the Kira we know be be queer, like, and open about it? So that's the only thing that was kind of like a disappointment about it. But I remember it being very exciting when it came out. I haven't really gotten back to Terok Nor in the Mirror Universe yet in my drunk rewatch, but I plan to get there soon.
Where to start with the mirror universe? um, I personally, am not a fan of the queer representation in the mirror universe. To me, it portrays bisexual and pansexual and just people in general that are attracted to multiple people or multiple genders. It portrays them as deceitful and sneaky and evil and manipulative and very promiscuous, which is not true. Bisexual and pansexual and basically omnisexual people in general do not have commitment issues. They are not evil. All they are just people that are attracted to multiple other people. And to me, I get the point of the mirror universe is like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to show like evil versions of the hero characters we know? But I don't understand why they have to twist the sexuality aspect of it to where in the Prime universe we have like decently positive representation, but in the Mirror universe, like I feel like taking a shower. Like I don't like it at all. Like and this is coming from someone. I was bisexual at one point. Like to be fair, I never acted on it, but I kind of thought to myself like, maybe I am. I feel like every queer has had a bisexual questioning phase, but and I definitely did. And I have many bisexual and pansexual friends, and I feel bad for them watching this, being like they're being portrayed in this very inaccurate and slightly offensive way. I'm not offended by it because I'm asexual, but I could definitely see somebody watching it and being like, "Wait, that's not right. Like, what are you saying? Like, this isn't true, you know?" And also, I find the mirror universe very icky with the way that everyone interacts with each other, where that
I think that's by design,
it has
though. But yeah,
absolutely, yeah,
right.
it is. But I hate that. I would much rather have it be everyone's like stabbing each other in the back rather than everyone wants to sleep with each other. Like, just that's just personally my opinion. So I'm not a fan of it, but that's just my 2 cents.
I think what saves it for me, I agree with a lot of your points, and I think what saves it for me is just like Nana Visitor bringing that like little bit of the, not, the whatever what we call the the prime, right? The prime, bring back a little bit of that prime, sensibility into it. But I didn't even see any of those things. But now that I'm looking back on it in my memory, like, you're 100% right about like how icky it is. But I think I'm interpreting it as like by design. But I do also think that it's unfair that her, pansexuality is expressed by an evil character. It should have been expressed by Kira, who we love
Yeah.
and adore and stuff like that. I think that would have been really neat to see that. with her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
it's
get
kind
me
of like
wrong. I love the actors. I think the actors are having so much fun in the mirror universe.
Right.
Like, and it's really that's what saves it for me. Like the cinematography and the set redressings and the outfits and the makeup and the actors are having a lot of fun. And I love the Intendant as a character, just being the complete opposite of Kira, where like the Intendant is completely self-centered. She's almost like a child in a way. I really like that, but it's more like so I like aspects of the mirror universe, but the sexuality is not one of them, just
I
personally.
think I think the mirror universe is like interesting in these like little kind of, tidbits, but I kind of love that Star Trek The Next Generation never had a mirror universe episode.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
really,
love
now that
that.
I'm thinking about it, here we are on the
it
26th
wouldn't have
anniversary of
fit. It
all
didn't
good
fit
things, but
the
it's
aesthetic
still
of the show,
around. I
I think.
mean, it's still around. Potentially, they could have gone there. Like people potentially were going to the I mean, apparently in Star Trek, people bounce in and out of the mirror universe like a lot. Like like it's just something that randomly happens,
It's a parallel
and
timeline so close that that's why you always
so
get caught up in it,
that's
right?
you get caught up in it or whatever. But like no one from TNG ever was affected by it, nor Voyager, right? Voyager didn't have a mirror universe
Yeah,
either. So I like that, and I kind of think that was one of my things that like really bummed me out about Star Trek Discovery season 1. But now that I'm thinking about Star Trek Discovery season 1, kudos to them for not making it such a their mirror universe was a lot more nuanced, I thought, and a little bit
yeah,
more
There was a
like
conscious
what.
decision to make it less sexualized. They said this in the behind the
Right,
scenes. Like I watched
that's
the
cool.
behind the scenes for DVD season one, and yeah, they made a conscious decision to make it less sexualized. A lot of things were a bit too on the nose for me. Like they put mirrors everywhere on the walls and stuff. It's like we get it, it's the mirror universe, but um,
I
yeah,
never noticed that. I never
Yeah,
yeah,
ever noticed
I
that.
they
never
they
Oh my
they
noticed that
god.
either.
they designed the sets a bit too obvious, right? But yeah, no, there was a conscious
I don't know.
decision
I
to
love
make
that table.
it more backstabbing, as you put it, more backstabbing, literal backstabbing with knives, than
Yeah.
I don't know, this kind of everyone's kind of,
Wow,
I
ding
guess it
ding
is kind of
ding.
icky.
Star Trek Discovery's got a lot of wins on today's
It
episode of
does.
Trek
Wow.
Chat. Oh my goodness, I
Hot
love
damn.
it.
Hot damn. I
But
find myself
also
admitting this quite
also
often, actually. Star Trek Discovery does have a lot of wins. Generally speaking, I dislike it, but there are singular moments or like specific things in the show that I quite enjoy.
yeah, yeah. But also with to be fair, I did enjoy Discovery and its mirror universe. I thought it was great. But once again with Giorgio, um we don't really know if Prime Giorgio is queer in any way. To be fair, we don't really get to see much of her, but there's no real indication that she's queer. But then in the mirror universe, you have her, having threesomes, and she's heavily, heavily flirting with Burnham. And once again, I'm just thinking, once again, it's a misrepresentation of bisexual and pansexual people because you're just playing them as like, oh, they're deceitful and sneaky and stuff, and like I was like, aren't we past that? Like, DS9, like, already did it badly, and then Discovery, like, took all that badness of the queerness of the mirror universe and then, like, put it into one character in
With
Mirror
leather.
Giorgio and then times it by like 1,000. And, and
It's
and to me it was almost insufferable in a way. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Discovery and I really liked their mirror universe and I thought the stuff that they did with Lorca was brilliant. But
Mm.
with Giorgio, I do like her personality. I like her being backstabbing and very evil and stuff. But once again, the sexuality, like, I didn't need that. I'm fine with her being queer, but I hate that she uses it to manipulate people. Like, it's very kind of insensitive in a way.
It's almost
I
as if
think that I think
subconsciously
it's interesting. I think it's interesting that you caught on to that, but and I don't think like I definitely think that like I think that my guess, I'm gonna be like kind of bold here and say that like I think my guess is that like Prime Giorgio would have been just as interested in having threesome with the Orions as Mirror Giorgio was. It's just that their intentions are different, right? Like, so I think Prime Georgia would have gone into that in a more loving way with like attention to her lovers and like, not, like, and like, consent and things like that.
Yeah,
And where,
absolutely. I
like,
think
and it would have
I
been
think
on a different setting,
Prime.
like on Ryza or whatever. But like
Yeah,
Mirror Georgia's out to do anything, and she doesn't care what it's going to take to do it. But she also happens to be, I would guess that they have similar sexuality preferences, but again, who knows? Nature versus nurture. But it is a tough one because I see how it is. It's like ultimately you can't separate the fact that there is a quality that is being shown that kind of represents that in a negative fashion.
Yeah, I was gonna say subconsciously, it's almost like consider like all of these characters coming out of the Mirror Universe, which is a bad place. They happen to have these sexual orientations, so it's like subconsciously, it's almost like the
People
shows are
associate,
teaching us. Yeah,
right? Yeah, exactly. It's conditioning us in a way, or conditioning people to associate those two things together.
yeah,
Bad
exactly.
Star Trek. Bad.
Like, I
Do
mean,
better.
you know, since the beginning of time, well, really, with bisexuality and pansexuality, and really, any orientation that is attraction to multiple genders or multiple people, it always has been portrayed in the media and in fiction and in real life as being deceitful and sneaky, and like, oh, can you really be with a bisexual person, because you never know, they might cheat on you, and stuff like that. And like, it's portrayed as like, um you're promiscuous and slutty, and like, you don't like, there's no commitment whatsoever, which is not true. There are plenty of bi and pan and omnisexual people that are in monogamous relationships, and it's consensual, and once again, that's very much like a conditioning thing of like trying to put people in boxes. Asexuals are robots, bisexuals are, bi and pan and omnisexuals are promiscuous, and gay men will just jump at any chance to be with a man, and they'll be overly feminine, and lesbians are butch and things like that. I just personally like, it's I'm just kind of like over it at this point. I'm like, do better. Like, it's just, how hard is it to have like a well written, accurately portrayed queer character? It's not that difficult. That's why I loved Beyond and Stamets and Culber, because it wasn't that big of a deal. They just had them there.
absolutely, absolutely. That
Mhm.
was one of the greatest wins for Discovery, and
And Star Trek.
and Star Trek
Yeah,
in general.
absolutely,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
All right. On that positive note, we didn't finish on the Mirror Universe. We finished on Stamets and
Yay.
Culber.
That's a good way. It's a good way to finish. I agree.
I love Stamets. I love him.
Culber, which is still my favorite character from Discovery. Um, to
Oh,
this
really?
day, yeah, I love him so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean is obsessed with Culber. He was
Yeah.
very upset.
Stamets is my personal favorite, so I guess it's a win-win.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm constantly fighting for Wilson Cruz to get a role in the MCU. Marvel Cinematic
Oh yeah, and he's
Universe.
fighting
That'd
for
be
that
great.
too.
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
we can all help him.
The Marvel Cinematic
Yay!
Universe wants to have a gay character, and they want it to be
Oh
done
my word, that'd be
by a gay actor.
perfect. That would
Wilson
be
Cruz
perfect.
is he's perfect. He acts very
Yeah, that
well.
would be perfect.
He's hot and buff. So come
Hmm.
on, he looks like a superhero already.
He
He
actually
does,
does
yeah.
look like a
Just in real
superhero
life,
already.
like,
It's
Yeah,
true. He's a real life superhero. Wilson
yeah.
Cruz, cheers to you.
But also, that would be a win for people of color as well. Like, not just queer. It would be a win for queer people and people of color. And also Wilson, like, I mean, he's just so lovely. Like, he's so supportive and so happy. Like, I feel like the MCU, after, once again, Endgame made me want to take a shower, but like, I feel like it needs that positivity. I would love that.
oh, he would fit in so well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
I just want to say it was so nice to talk to you and hear your voice, Corey. We've been friends on Twitter, and this is cool that this is the first time we're actually talking to each other by voice. So I appreciate
Aha, I got him
meeting
first.
you. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, well, same to y'all. Thank y'all so much for having me. I really enjoyed this discussion. Like, I'm always open to talk about Star Trek and queerness. So you put the two together, it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for having me on this episode. It's very special to me. Thank you.
No, it's an honor. It's an honor to have everyone. Honestly, I'm just so happy that people come onto my show. I love it. I love it. That's it for today. So, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening to this. If you are listening to this, and if you held out to the very end, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video, and I think I think you can send an email to trickonthetube@gmail.com if you want to react and you're listening to this on one of the podcast websites. There you go. LGBT representation in Star Trek. Conclusion is they can do a bit better, but we've seen some very good strides in recent Star Trek. I think that's it.
Cheers.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay. Live long and prosper.